Hello, buddies, fellow Franco fans, fans of the bizarre, fans of the cool man, fans of Uncle Jess. Hello, this is Jason Rudy, your host once again for the Franco Observer podcast. This is episode 14, and on this Franco podcast, this is going to be a special Franco podcast, Franco Observer podcast episode, because this is going to stray from the normal of the podcast where we have the introduction, like I normally do, introducing the film, talking about the behind the scenes, and then doing the review. On this one, we're doing the unfinished film, Mandinga. It was unreleased, and so therefore we cannot watch it and tell you and review it and tell you about it. But what I can do is I can tell you the story behind it, what happened, how this changed the Erwin C. Dietrich and Jess Franco relationship, and what happened with all the situation. Like all episodes, this is researched from the Flowers of Perversion book by Stephen Thrower, available at Amazon. This is from Volume 2, which is from like... what is it, the first one they do? Like Juliet to 69, from that all the way to the end. So it's from that era. So basically, what happened was after the Die Marquise von Sade was done and released, and not released, but when that shoot was done, he decided to do Mandinga. So basically, here's everything from the top. Mandinga, unreleased, Italy, 1975. Alternative titles. La Mandinga was the shooting title. Mandinga die Nackte Sklavin, proposed German release title. Mandinga, the Naked Slave. So yeah, he had done Die Sklavin, and now this was Die Nackte Slavin. Production company was SEFI Cinematography from Rome again. The eventual rights holder of the Franco footage was Erwin Dietrich, and the timeline on this is the partial shooting date was, he did a partial shooting date in November of 75, and then the shooting continued from December 75 to early January 76, and then Dietrich and SEFI contract was eventually signed on March 18th of 76. The director of this, Jess Franco. Producer was Mario Alabiso. Director of photography, camera operator was Jess Franco, and makeup was Michel Goningen. The cast on this was William Berger, Lena Romay, Benny Cardoso, who had worked with him since Girl from Rio, Dennis Torre, the beautiful Martine Steedle, and Ramon Ardid, which was Lena Romay's husband at the time. So here we go from the top. Production notes. This failed production was a major disaster for Franco and cost him dearly on both a personal and financial level. Friendships were destroyed, chickens came home to roost, and once the dust had settled, he found himself in a very different relationship with his producer, Erwin Dietrich. In late November 1975, Franco accepted an offer from an Italian company called SEFI Cinematografica, possibly with some minor input from Eurocine, to shoot a script titled Mandinga, essentially a Mandingo knockoff concerning black slavery and the erotic undercurrents thereof. Franco and his crew took up residence at the Hotel Le Quetzal in La Grande Motte in the south of France, while shooting began at the nearby Castle Moguer in Montpellier. Then in early January, when the film was almost completed, Franco disappeared, without explanation, taking Romay with him and leaving the cast and crew, including actors Benny Cardoso and Dennis Torre, Romay's husband Ramon Ardid, and makeup artist Michel Grodin, hanging out at the hotel. After 2 weeks with no news, the hotel management called the police, who came to interview the stranded production team. Cardoso, Torres, and Ardid were advised to file a complaint against Franco, or else they'd be personally liable for the mounting hotel costs. In later interviews, Franco claimed that the budget had dried up and he'd been unable to reach the Italian producers by telephone, so he and Romay took a train to Rome in search of an explanation and or money. This was as far as he ever went toward explaining what had happened. Erwin Dietrich, however, was more forthcoming and said he had a lot of financial troubles, overdue bills he had to pay. Several producers were hunting for him because he still owed them large sums. Every once in a while he just disappeared from the hotel where he was staying without paying the bill, leaving his suitcases and personal belongings behind. Luckily for Franco, this time Erwin Dietrich stepped in to save the day. He made the necessary apologies, arranged to settle Franco's hotel debt, and retrieved his belongings, which had been impounded by the hotel. I can remember once seizing one of his suitcases from a hotel in the south of France from which he had a moonlight flit. I sent a guy down there to pay Franco's bill and fetch the luggage because Jess told me it contained the negative of a film I had already paid him for. Of course, there was no negative in the suitcase. However, according to Huber, a negative was in fact retrieved. Maybe not in the suitcase, but among Franco's abandoned possessions. It represented all that had been shot so far of the third film in Franco's original deal with Erwin Dietrich. Hugh Huber, who knew Dietrich and was granted access to the elite film archives rights. The retrieved film cans were indeed the incomplete Die Sklaven, slaves. This explains the long gap in the production of Die Sklaven. Franco's hotel debts of 14,000 francs were paid in June 1976 by Dietrich's production manager, Eduard Stockley. Stockley collected the film cans and also brought with him Franco's suitcase containing a love letter from Lena, his address/phone book, treatments, partially handwritten, for Midnight Party, Shining Sex, Lorna, etc., and some fake fun movie posters drawn with titles like Lashksiv and Ejaculation. So it seems that Franco's story about going to Italy in search of missing funds was, shall we say, the invention of an unreliable narrator. If it really had been the fault of the Italian producers, he would not have needed to make himself scarce. Given that he failed to alert his stranded production crew, it's difficult to avoid the assumption that he did a runner because the financial shortfall was his fault. He never rang the hotel to speak to the cast and crew because he knew how furious they would be when they found out there was no money left to pay them. Bearing in mind Dietrich's observation about several producers hunting for him, perhaps Franco was personally responsible for the budget drying up. Did an angry creditor from an earlier production track him down to the hotel Le Quetzalcoatl and bang on his door with a couple of sturdy fellows in tow, demanding immediate payment? Did Franco write a check from the Mandinga budget to get them off his back? If so, he must have realized that this would not sit well with the Mandinga cast and crew still patiently awaiting their money. One imagines Franco and Romay clambering out a third-floor balcony on knotted bed sheets in the middle of the night, hailing a cab and making a dash for the airport. Going on the run with his muse Lena Romay by his side, the director must have felt a little like one of his own nefarious characters, as though the criminal scenarios of films like Downtown, Women Behind Bars, and Midnight Party were leaking into real life. Perhaps it was even fun in a reckless and irresponsible sort of way, but it's harder to feel empathy when you realize that they were betraying not just a few strangers, but their close friends, too. Benny Cardoso, a semi-regular in Franco land since The Girl from Rio in 1968, never worked with him again. The biggest betrayal, though, was suffered by Ramon Ardid, Romay's young husband and Franco's friend and business associate. For Romay to run off with Franco like that was a public slap in the face that must have been deeply humiliating for Ardid, as he hung around with the makeup girl in the secondary cast waiting for his wife to return. Not surprisingly, it was the nail in the coffin of their marriage. Yeah, it's pretty jacked up on a side note. So basically, yeah, it looked like Franco ditched everybody and took off, and who knows if he was searching for people that he owed money to, or if he ended up losing money or spending money he didn't have, and that seemed to be a constant thing with his career. So yeah, going back to that. Ramon Ardid first entered Franco's orbit in 1969, taking uncredited press photos of Soldad Miranda during the Barcelona shoot for Count Dracula. Franco liked the pictures and a few months later invited Ardid to take promotional photographs for She Killed in Ecstasy, 1970. As a result, he was also on hand during filming of the unfinished Giulietta. He took the well-known keyhole photo used to promote She Killed in Ecstasy, which actually came from the Julieta shoot. When Franco set up his production company, Manacoa, he invited Ardid to become his regular photographer. Toward the end of 1972, Franco met Ardid's 18-year-old wife, Lena Romay, and immediately realized her immense screen potential. Over the following 3 years, Romay and Ardid became permanent fixtures in the Franco universe. Romay, of course, became Franco's screen muse, while Ardid moved from still photographer to assistant cameraman to production secretary, and also became a regular acting presence, being quite willing to strip off and get involved in the erotic adventures on screen. By the end of 1975, he graduated from general factum to trusted plenipotentiary, authorized by Franco to sign documents on Manacoa's behalf. When Franco ran off with Romay, it was the last straw for Ardid, who may have already been uncomfortable with the ever-growing rapport between his wife and Jess Franco. One need only to watch Downtown to see which way the wind was blowing. But what about the film at heart of this situation? Earlier accounts of the story claim that Franco had shot less than half of Mandinga before doing his Moonlight flit. Newly available documentation, however, suggests otherwise. On January 3rd of 1976, the film's Italian producer, SEFI, wrote to Erwin Dietrich, We hereby confirm that the film above, on the instructions of Mr. Jess Franco Manera, is your property for the territories of Germany, Austria, Switzerland. We also confirm that the negative is deposited with the Technicolor Laboratory in Rome, and that we hereby give you access so that you can make all the copies that you hold necessary for the exploitation of your film in the territories of your skills. We will also send you the international columns in due course and the list of dialogues to establish your German dubbing. According to this letter, Mandinga was not abandoned unfinished. A viable negative had been deposited in Rome. This makes it clear that Franco's story about the budget drying up was bunk. On January 15th of 76, Dietrich wrote to Franco at the Hotel Le Quetzalcoatl to discuss completion of Die Marquise von Sade and Barbed Wire Dolls, evidently expecting an answer by return post. But by the time Franco and Romay had done their disappearing act, 2 months later, however, something had changed. On March 18th, Dietrich wrote this short note, countersigned by Franco. I hereby confirm that my request/demand to Mr. Jess Franco Manera in regard to the film Mandinga, the Naked Slave, has been voided by the conclusion and implementation of the contract with Elite Films AG. I therefore relieve Mr. Franco Manera completely and utterly. The following day, Franco signed a handwritten note promising to pay approximately £6,000 to Madame Elabiso of SEFI Cinematografia. This sum would be around £40,000 or $56,000 in today's money. Italian producer Mario Elabiso was present in the first meeting between Franco and Dietrich in late April, early May 75. Presumably, one of the projects discussed was SEFI's future production of Mandinga. The person to whom Franco owed money in the wake of Mandinga was evidently Mario's wife, whom assumes was the executive in charge of the company. In essence, what seems to have happened is that Dietrich extricated Franco from his legal liability to complete Mandinga, and Franco himself paid a sizable sum of money to the producers to compensate them. Why was this necessary when the film had apparently been completed? Perhaps after scrutiny of the negative, the Elabisos regarded it as unreleasable? This was, after all, a time when Franco was dashing off films with such a cavalier attitude to technical merit that Dietrich had initially considered shelving Barbed Wire Dolls. Maybe Mandinga was beyond rough and ready. Maybe it was genuinely appalling, out of focus, incoherent, too dark, or too overexposed, or simply not the script that had been promised. Eventually, in September of 76, SEFI Cinematografia mounted a second production of Mandinga, directed by obscure spaghetti western helmer Mario Penzotti. None of the actors involved were carried over from the Franco production, and the central location of Franco's version, Montpelliar's Castle Montague, was nowhere to be seen. As far as one could tell, none of the Franco footage was incorporated. Certainly it suggests that the real reason Franco couldn't shoot in Italy anymore was not because he'd grown sick of the Italian producer, but because they had grown sick of him. In the hothouse context of Rome film production, all it would have taken to blot Franco's reputation was a tiny bit of gossip from one producer to another. Sadly, Franco's Mandinga seems to have ended its days moldering away in the Technicolor labs in Rome. Perhaps it's still there today, but we can't see the film. But while we can't see the film, we can, thanks to Roman Gütiger and U. Huber, take a peek into the contents of the mysterious suitcase that Dietrich retrieved from the Hotel Le Quasical. Here's a partial list of the contents, including Jess Franco's notes, script outlines, and plans for future films of January 76. And let's see, it's a list of 16. Starting from 1 to 16. Number 1, The Blue Medea is a handwritten synopsis by Jess Franco. 2, Dunia la Novia Eterna, a typewritten story adaptation, based on Pushkin's book The Postmaster, adapted by David Kuhn and Jess Franco. This refers to Alexander Pushkin's The Postmaster, a short story from his collection, The Tales of Late Ivan Petrovich Belkin, the original tales of a poor Russian station manager, innkeeper, whose orderly life is thrown into chaos when his beloved daughter, Donya, is kidnapped by a handsome hussar. He discovers her whereabouts and tries to see her, but is thrown out without making contact. Upon learning that she now lives in a high society existence and does not wish to leave, he goes back to his station a broken man. Number 3, Mas que don e vole linda, 4 typewritten pages. The title page is headed This Perverse Woman by David Kuhn. Number 4, Yakula, 10 pages, handwritten by Jess Franco. This is the Franco's original story outline for the film that became La Contessa Noire, also known as Female Vampire. Number 5, Lorna the Exorcist, 9 typewritten pages. Number 6, Minuit Party, Porno Pop, and Shining Sex, 4 handwritten pages, not in Franco's hand. Cast and character names, crew, plot, shooting times. Number 7, Concert in 6 Major Ejaculation, 5 typewritten pages. A film by J.J. Johnson, based on a story by Jess and Nicole Franco. A French-Belgian co-production, executive producer and director Jess Franco. And it's basically a bunch of notes. Let's see. Okay. That's really not that important. Okay, 8. Melody in Sex Major, Sexirella, 8 handwritten pages. 9. Giulietta de Sade, 13 handwritten pages, including budget calculations. This adaptation of the Marquis de Sade's Justine is a modern-day remount of sequences Franco had already filmed in '68 for his Sedan period drama Justine. Number 10, La Porte de Bouillard, The Door of the Mist, a complete screenplay by Alain Petit, after a character created by Jess Franco with characters including Irena von Karnstein. The present story is dedicated to J. Franco and to his Black Countess. Number 11, Les Hermanas de la Cruz, The Sisters of the Cross, complete handwritten story treatment by Jess Franco. Number 12, Number 12, Los Desperados, 13 typewritten pages and 5 pages of handwritten notes. Number 13, Pace e Mezzanotte, script by Gaston de Herrera, translates as Peace at Midnight. Number 14, Dracula Jr., a story outline for a multi-monster horror comedy featuring Dracula, Frankenstein and his monster, the werewolf, the Phantom of the Opera, Quasimodo, and the Invisible Man. Sounds like something I wrote. Number 15, Tarzana, 10 handwritten pages by Jess Franco. Number 16, hand-drawn poster mock-ups for 3 imaginary films, Dynamite South, Lascive, and Ecstasy Island. So that is basically that part. That would have been film number 73 from Jess Franco. And then around that same time, unfinished film number 6 he did was The Killer Wore Black Stockings. It was unfinished. L'Assassin Portrait de la Basse-Noise, Italy, 1975. Shooting date was November 75, which was about the beginning of the Mandinga shoot, because that was partial shooting date November 75, and this was shooting date November 75. And this had Catalina Romay, Denise Torre, Benny Cardoso, and Ramon Ardit. And this is a shorter deal. Production notes. In parallel with the shooting of Mandinga, Franco also began a secret back pocket production called The Assassin Wore Black Stockings. Correspondence from the Elite Film Archives first mentions the film in relation to a deal being done by Franco and BOS Films. A letter from Hansen to Dietrich dated October 22nd, 1975 says, "We have spoken with Mr. Franco Manera, who assures us that the two pictures of which we have 50% of the foreign sales of, i.e. Women Behind Bars and The Assassin Wore Black Stockings, have nothing to do with the 4 pictures you mentioned in your letter, Dietrich's own Franco Productions. They will have French nationality, and the original production company will be Eurocine of Paris. The assumption has long been that the killer wore black stockings amounted to just a few minutes of footage. However, correspondence from the Elite Film Archives between Franco and the Technicolor Laboratory suggests otherwise." Not a lot is known about the storyline, although according to Alain Petit's Manacoa files, production manager and actor Denis Torre remembers shooting scenes on rooftops and in hotel rooms, appearing as a killer, hiding under a bed, and being present at the death of a character played by Benny Cardoso. The genre appears to have been kind of a giallo or creamy. From the title, it certainly sounds as though Franco was aiming for the same market as The Killer Reserved 9 Seats, The Killer Must Kill Again by Luigi Cozzi, and Vice Has Black Stockings by Tano Cimarosa. Franco tried to shoot a new version of The Killer Wore Black Stockings in 1984, but it never saw the light of day either. So, after these two, basically his film 73 and the unfinished film 6, he then did the 3 pictures on closed sets with no exterior shots, closely observed by Dietrich, and with camera operators employed by Dietrich, which would be Girls in the Night Traffic, White Skin, Black Thighs, and Moto Erotica. Those 3 are controlled by Dietrich and were unusual and different than Franco's other films, as, like I said, there's no exteriors, no sailboats. All the stuff that made Franco's films his own style is absent in these next 3 films because of these situations that you had just heard about. So that's going to be the end of this episode, the special shorter episode, probably come in under about a half hour. If you like the show and want to talk to us, or feel free to, we're at Franco Observer, FrancoObserver at yahoo.com, Franco Observer at yahoo.com. You can also please download the episodes. They increase the numbers, makes the audience go up, and if we have more audiences, we can start co-promoting on other shows and keep building the audiences. So if you like the show, please tell your friends, please download the episodes, please subscribe, please rate, please share, please leave any positive comments you can. I appreciate it. I didn't think I mentioned on the last episode, but we have a Franco Observer podcast page on Facebook. We have a Franco Observer podcast page on Instagram. You can find us there. Find the podcast at any of your listening platforms. You can also find us on YouTube. Type in Franco Observer and you'll see my channel with the Franco Observer episodes, along with other short films I did. Other past projects I was involved in is on there as well, if you want to check that out. Let's see what else we want to shoot on here. Yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up on this one. So once again, this was episode 14, dealing with film that was never released, film 73, and the unfinished film number 6. That was Mandinga and The Killer Wore Black Stockings. Franco did a lot of unfinished films and things that were unreleased, some that have seen the light of day since these books were written, so hopefully we will see things that have disappeared come around again. I know they just did that with Oh What a Honeymoon, and some other things that we thought were unavailable now are popping up, so let's see if Severn jumps ahead and puts out some more Franco stuff. Let's pressure them and get some more Franco Blu-rays out there. But, yeah, there's always good gray market dealers for DVDRs of Franco stuff, so, so, yeah, get a hold of us, talk to us. We'll let you know cool places to get the cool Franco stuff. I'm always down to let you know where I get my t-shirts, my movies, my books, all that good stuff, because we're here to share the wealth, not be greedy. We want everybody to know where everything is, because as a collector and somebody you want to find their stuff, somebody else, that's contacts are so important. So hopefully I can be your contact to your Franco wants and needs. So thanks again for listening. This is always in praise and memory of Jess Franco, bringing the name and films of Jess Franco to new eyes and ears. I am your host, Jason Rudy. This has been a solo episode. Hope you dug it. Peace out. Talk to you soon. Listen to the next episode, Girls in the Night Traffic. It was a fun one.